Okay, wow, thank you for sticking around. Very excited to do this. Let's have another round of applause for Quinn Hallenbeck. So I think I speak for a lot of us when I say we're curious about the genesis of how this all came together. Would you like to enlighten us?
I would love to, by thanking everyone who helped make this work possible. Nathan Vass did the cinematography and the editing. Thank you, Nathan. This incredible megalithic structure, dolmen, was created by Kenneth Webb. Thank you, Kenneth. The costume design, especially the potato nun, was designed and created by Margaret Cummings. Margaret's a little fabric artist, utterly delightful quilts if you're looking for a quilt. The lighting design was done by Butler, who's not present, and it was run by Cameo Lethem, my good friend. Thank you, Cameo. This piece is the first performance I've made in 9 years. Wow. I have been creating photography in that time. I've been building a kind of livable life. And I've been especially through my photography, I've been throwing out grant applications, being like, hey, I want to make a piece in dialogue with self-portraits of women in nature, which is a tradition in Western art. I would like to do XYZ. I submitted a grant application to the City of Seattle's Office of Arts and Culture 2025 City Arts Grant Program, and I proposed that I was going to make a work in conversation about gender, the land, colonization. And then come October last year, I was sitting in bed, and I was just scrolling through my email, and then I saw, City of Seattle, you received the grant. I'm like, no, I have to make a performance now. And so this grant got me into the studio. It also funded an extended research process, which was how I eventually landed on the theme of the potato.
Tell us a little about how you settled on that central theme and some of the things it represents for you.
Yeah, so my grant proposal involved, I wanted to investigate what it meant to be a 13th generation American settler. I also wanted to investigate what it meant to be a woman from the West. I grew up in California on Paiute Shoshone land, that's in the mountains. And I also wanted to interrogate what it meant to be a settler woman. So I wanted to kind of bring all of these things together. I started in my family archives, and luckily I have, especially on my father's side of the family, people who are deeply invested in understanding our family's history. And in kind of investigating those archives on both sides, 3 big stories came up. The first one was our first ancestors settled from Holland in the 1630s in upstate New York as part of the Paltroon system. So they were working the land, they were poor people. Another big story was on my mom's side of the family. We were farming in Arkansas, and then the Dust Bowl happened, and that brought us out to California. So I'm like, okay, so working the land is really part of my family history. And the last part, the big story, biggest one, from both sides of the family was, and then the potato famine happened, and your ancestors came over, and that's a huge American story. And I thought, okay, this is really resonates with a lot of Americans, a lot of white Americans. Let's learn what happened with the potato famine. Why would the potato do that to them? They've been eating it forever. Wrong. The potato is from Peru. I was shocked. I was shocked that Europeans did not eat the potato until the 18th century, really. And I was really curious about that. So when I came to this part of the research, the potato, I realized, oh, that's hilarious. Most importantly, it's also potentially dramatic, and it's also incredibly fertile as a symbol in itself.
So I'm intrigued at how you bring this historical interest into sort of a mythical or archetypal space in here. Tell us about how these sequences that you've shown us relate to each other, to the history.
Yeah, I'm going to take this as a question of process and how I built the work. After the research, I kind of concluded I had to put a stop on it and be get your butt into the empty room and start moving. And the first things that I built was a music kind of landscape that felt right. My mother worked in the music industry, and we listened to music every day growing up, a broad array of music, and so that's kind of my taste. in bringing that together. That was one part in kind of creating a number of scenes. Very naturally, I started to develop characters for each of those scenes, and each character had a task. Additionally, when creating this work, I wanted to take a page out of the book of a French philosopher, Gilles Deleuze. He has this concept of the rhizome, the rhizomatic, as a way of theorizing, a way of thinking. A rhizome is like a ginger root or a potato or a fern, where the kind of plant grows in all directions, and where there's more resources, it actually repopulates itself, it grows. It has many foci, many focus points. And as opposed to structuring something like a tree, where it's like, here's the foundation of the piece, and then it grows, and then it blossoms. I wanted to actually dig into the ground and create many different kind of focus points. So in my mind, the characters that I perform are discontinuous throughout time. There's no kind of organization in that way. I wanted to organize things in an emotional arc, but I wanted to pull together characters that were inspired like by the famine, by women in the West, and wanted to focus on a settler experience, because that's my experience. I also wanted to focus on, I wanted to embody kind of an expression of colonization and kind of the horrors, and creating a mix of video was also a really important element in that. There are techniques that you can do when editing video that I think express a psychology that you can't achieve in performance alone. So I wanted to kind of bring all those elements together, having a set, having a kind of psychological mythic space, and then the soundscape all kind of coming together to create another world. One part of my research was in the anthropology of rites of passage. And in many rituals of rites of passage, there are like dual symbols, and there's like a cycle. For example, you go out of the village, you go into a hut or a cave. It's like you're being buried. And then when you complete your initiation, you come out of the cage, out of the cave or the hut. It's like you're being born. The cave is now not a grave, but a womb. And I found the potatoes have a similar ambiguity. It's at once a corpse, we're burying it. It's also a fetus, we're digging it up, it's new. It's a mother, it's a child. It is an incredibly complex symbol. And I wanted to structure the piece with a similar complexity. Like at the beginning, we are underground. We are brought up into the light. We grow, we're processed, we're cut into little pieces, and then we are buried again to lay seed to the next generation.
And tell us about how perceptions on the potato have changed over time, how nowadays it's primarily, it almost always has a negative connotation, and how that wasn't always true.
Yes. In addition to, I focused my historical research on, of course, movement of peoples, on commerce, how the potato fits into commerce. I also wanted to research art historical analysis of the potato. So in Europe in the 19th century, we have very famous images of impoverished people eating the potato. We have Van Gogh's Potato Eaters, a very famous painting. We also have works by Danish artists, such as an artist with the last name of Blendenkilde, who painted this painting, Worn Out, which is more a comment on the conditions of the peasants in Europe at that time. It's a man collapsed in a potato field. There's also the works of Courbet and Millet, of people farming potatoes. We have the gleaners. We also have this one image, I can't remember the title, where people are praying over what might be a bag of potatoes or a dead baby. I'm into it. So that is the most present that comes to mind. I then turn my attention to how is potato represented in our culture. It's associated with decadence, obesity, it's with unhealthy living, potato chips, fries, like, oh, you Americans, all you eat is like meat and potatoes. I also wanted to look at indigenous Peruvian art, and I discovered especially 6th century Moche ceramics have these incredibly detailed ceramic forms of the human body enmeshed with the potato. I highly recommend looking those up. They're really incredible.
I'm very interested in some of the research you've shared with me where you're looking at the movement of human bodies westward into the Americas and the movement of the potato as a South American technology moving eastward and how it's come to define European peasant cuisine. The tomato is another item that we think of being Italian, but it's American. Share more, please.
Yes, historically, very fascinating. The conquistadors from Spain come to South America and conquer the empires there. Among like the gold and tobacco and vanilla and chocolate and all of these wonderful things that were developed by indigenous people in South America, they also bring the potato. And this is in the 15th century, so why did it take so long for Europeans to eat it? Every other part of the potato plant is poisonous. And so our ancestors, them peasants, be suspect. And it was actually, by Shakespeare's time, it was labeled as an aphrodisiac, which is very fascinating. It wasn't until there was a change in land practice. So the 15th century, 16th century, we start to get early developments of capitalism. 17th century, 18th century, we're moving out of feudalism into a fully capitalist system. And where a market, profitability, demands what is happening in our lives, you have land that was previously allocated to food production being instead grazed for pasture because wool is more profitable per acre. So you have higher pressure on peasant land systems. You have Napoleonic wars. You have soldiers marching across wheat fields, destroying the crop, eating all the surplus as they're being quartered by these communities, and you have widespread famine. A French botanist in the 18th century says, "I've conducted a study of this vegetable, the potato, and it is a solution for all of our problems." It is high in nutrients like vitamin C, there's fiber. You can live on potatoes and milk alone. You don't thrive, but you live. And that became a solution. Actually, in Prussia, the emperor at the time, the Kaiser, took this research and launched a campaign. He brought potatoes into his communities. He brought carts full. He was marketing, look, eat, delicious, yum. This is how you grow it. It wasn't until, and Kenneth reminded me of this, that he apocryphally planted royal potato fields, and he had guards pretend to guard the potato fields, hoping that people would steal them, and finally launched the potato as a brand. And so the potato becomes this kind of convenient solution to famine, and it never becomes a part of a robust food system. As a result, you have people being pushed into eating only potatoes, especially in Ireland, which was colonized by the English, and landlords from England, having never set foot in Ireland, kind of dictating what's happening with the land. People are subletting on sublets of land just so they can grow enough potatoes to survive, and all it took was one organism gone.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the potato famine was manufactured, literally and figuratively, by capitalist land practices. There was enough food and enough land, but there wasn't the means or the...
I'm not a historian, but that's certainly my stance from history. You'll have to kind of, again, I'll check your sources. But there's a great book, Rot, author I can't remember, as well as Potato, what was it called? The Propitious Esculent, another great history of the potato that I read. And both of these books take the stance that the potato famine did not need to happen. The microbe that causes late blight actually hit all of Europe, but only Ireland starved in the way that they did. Food was actually exported at the height of the famine from Ireland, and actually the blight comes back. So in 43 is the worst year of the famine. In 48 the blight actually comes back, but farmers unionize basically, and it's called the land wars, and they fight to close exports of food, and less people die.
Tell us about, I don't think we know what an axomama is, or what a dolmen is. Please enlighten us.
So an axomama is the goddess of the potatoes in Peru, in Colombia. And I wanted some gesture of this work to be rematriating the potato, at least in my life, returning her spiritually to the Peruvian kind of axomama. And there's some representations, very sparse, mostly in pottery, of her kind of form. And as early as the 6th century BC, we have evidence in the archaeological record of axomama. In those images, she's represented as part human, part potato, and she's begetting like herself. It's a pretty incredible image. This structure that Kenneth built for me is called a dolmen. It is a megalithic structure, usually seen throughout Europe, but also across the steppes of Kazakhstan. And it is a common solution to mark making in the Neolithic world. 2, 3 big rocks, bam, here we go. They are particularly prominent in Ireland, in my mind, and that is why I wanted to bring that into the work, the kind of Irish potato famine, wanting to like call my ancestors into this work as well. It was often used to mark graves or to mark astrological points, such as Stonehenge, very famous example of megalithic structures like dolmens. And that was a very early image of bringing that in. There are a lot of dolmens still standing in Ireland, for example, and in those cases, the Irish peoples sometimes see like, oh, this is a portal for the Sheath, like the fairies and the other world. So that's what this is, a dolmen.
Love it, and thank you for recreating that on stage for us. Okay, there is an interesting relationship between operating in ironic and sincere registers throughout this piece.
I think for like a wounded child inside of me is always like, I want to cry, but I'm going to laugh. And that's kind of my mode of survival. And I find as a strategy as an artist to like bring something sincere to an audience, it's very effective to sneak it right under a joke. And when you're laughing, you are letting down your guard. It is a very visceral way of kind of being vulnerable. And it's only then that you can, and also comedy is such a common way of analyzing dark topics in our culture. And I'm really satisfied in investigating physical comedy. I'm really inspired by silent films and the movements and gestures in silent films, which were influenced especially by Francois Delsarte and his Delsarte system from the 19th century. That was a mode of physical education and movement study that was like looking at Greek marble especially and classical paintings and kind of training people to move in that kind of way. It's a highly legible way of moving. I'm also deeply inspired by like mime and clown, very unpopular forms of movement in our culture. But I have always just been enchanted, and I think everyone's is enchanted by how mimes can create a reality out of nothing. That is fascinating. In relation to popular music, it's music that, the music as a whole. My mother worked for Tower Records, actually, as an advertising executive for the West Coast. She's been up to Seattle multiple times to that capacity, but she stopped working to raise us. But we always listened to music in our house, and a lot of music on vinyl, on CD, and that kind of melange is really present in my tastes.
So I noticed that you have specified that this piece is 45 minutes, which is only a couple minutes longer than an LP. Are we intended to perceive this as a linear progression of songs or as a narrative? Tell us about that.
Thanks for noticing that. Yeah, that's an interesting kind of solution, that kind of length of time. I would love this to be my solo album. Yeah, the vinyl can be potato shaped. With this selection of songs, could you repeat the last part of the question? I was too busy making a joke.
That's what we're here for. What was I talking about? The linearity of the piece. Is it rhizomatic, as you suggest earlier with that imagery, or is it plot linear? I mean.
Yes. I definitely wanted to take a inspiration from Deleuze. I trusted that I misunderstood the concept, but I hope that my misunderstanding of his thought would be generative for me. And so I'm like, let's vibe with making the piece potato shaped. And I created a kind of series of characters and have kind of brought together connective tissue. In my intuition as an artist, this is a non-linear work in terms of these characters are displaced by space and time. They have common experiences, they have common concerns, common dysphorias. But the structure of the work is an emotional kind of arc, a circle. I wanted to structure the piece like a harvest, where at the beginning we're starting underground in the darkness, we're being dug up, we're being processed or cooked, we're being like chopped into little pieces, and then we're being put back into the ground to grow again.
I was really struck by the musical sequence. You take works that are often quite clear in their meaning, the Tammy Wynette piece, the Tennessee Ernie Ford piece, which both struck me because they are songs about obligation, about duty, and yet you set those unambiguous meanings against things that carry a lot of mystery and a lot of questions. Please share more about that choice.
I like how you say mystery, and I wanted to create that era of mystery. And the music for me is a wonderful kind of way of juxtaposing. I mentioned my kind of family's love of music, listening to it all the time, cleaning and making dinner and all this stuff, always on vinyl or CD, never listening to the radio. Well, sometimes listening to the radio, but we would even make mixtape CDs for each other for like long road trips. There were lots of competitions, and my parents drove us away from our small town, Bishop, California, 5 hours to go to a competition, so I could like perform and then hold up a little trophy. But on those long trips, my sister and I, we would make mixtapes, and we would give them as gifts to each other and everyone in the family. And so that was that practice of curating. And I'm sure many folks in the audience have made a mixtape in the past, not only like on a CD or like on an actual tape. And you kind of get into a lot of pacing like that. And the kind of length of an LP, I think, is a kind of common length that many mediums kind of land on. It's also like the length of like a television show, or like the first act of a play. So I think it's a really nice kind of period of time.
And presenting the songs in sequence causes us to see patterns that we learn otherwise. I've never thought of Scott Joplin and Bach together, but they both have so much harmonies and so much.
Yeah, so Scott, I wanted to juxtapose to your original question, like why choose the music that you did. I wanted to juxtapose kind of music that had its own narrative quality, and kind of standing out of the way of that and letting the narrative of the song be juxtaposed with an image that I was creating. In that case, I was like Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire, great song. Tammy Wynette, Stand By Your Man, great song. Wanted to complicate the narratives that those songs had in the image making. And I also wanted to juxtapose pieces across time that I think are kind of under-celebrated. Scott Joplin was a composer in the early 20th century who wrote rags, like the Maple Leaf Rag, or this one's called The Entertainer. And similar to Bach, who is much more highly celebrated in our culture, Bach has an incredible mastery of crafting like mathematic crystals that like emerge into music. It's very beautiful. And I think Scott Joplin's attention to juxtaposition and voicing is very similar to Bach's kind of attention in fugues. And even though they're working in different mediums, I wanted to bring them right next to each other for myself.
Some of the contrasts of the music are enormously effective. To hear the Schubert coming after everything before, it feels cleansing. The choreography during Cantata Number 80, the Bach piece, is really exciting to me. I think that's the fastest version of Cantata Number 80 I've ever heard. Tell us about the choreography during that section.
So that kind of, the arc of the choreography in that Bach section is where I'm wearing the black jacket. It's like my body's taking control of itself over me. And that has been a common theme in my work. In Seattle, I created a piece of Sleeping Beauty in 2014 and Serenade in 2016. And they have similar kind of obsessions with the body, like taking control.
Coming alive.
Coming alive, betraying yourself. I first encountered that kind of style of movement. In college, I worked with the choreographer Idan Cohen, who is also similarly interested in the body. For him, it was investigating the trauma inherited generationally and like kind of how that emerges in the body. For me, it makes so much sense as a transgender woman to be kind of investigating the body in that way. There was a point in my leading up to my gender transition where my body was like, you are doing this, I am putting you in a position where you have to do this. Or do you ever get like so stressed where your body just kind of puts itself into risky situations, so you have to rest? It's very interesting like how our bodies take control a lot of times. This feeling of your body betraying you and your body kind of taking control. For me, there was this kind of moment where in my transition, my body was like, no, we're doing this, come on, get with the program. And me being like, no, we can still have male privilege. It's so good. And that kind of energy of betraying yourself is something that I think speaks to everyone regardless of their gender journey. I wanted to bring that into that section, and it's also kind of fun to play around, so thank you for indulging me.
I'm curious about the choreography during that because I think both of our work seems to explore failure in interesting ways. Please share.
Yes, I started actually dancing very late. My history of movement before then was in athletics, especially. I was in track and field, I was a cheerleader, I did color guard, I did baseball and soccer, and then I also did musical theater all of a sudden. And I was always pegged as the dancer. I didn't start dancing until I was 17, and I was like, great, I'm gonna audition for Juilliard. So I did get in, luckily. But that kind of experience of failing was very formative to my practice of dance. And in college, it was like this big uphill battle. I was proud to be the underdog, and that really fed me.
There's something beautiful about failure. I feel like it's the inappropriate word to use, but we seem to learn during those moments. I tend to think of failure as an achievement because it's something that requires effort. And you seem to express that so effectively. Watching that piece felt like it was wrestling, again, literally and figuratively, with that conundrum as this is the part of our lives where we grow, and it's also the hardest and most unpleasant part.
Failure is essential for artists. It is difficult to structure one's art practice around the creation of marketable products because products can't fail. They have to succeed in the market. But art has to fail. That's the only kind of way you get feedback if this is working or not. I think also failure for all humans is it gives so much to us. It tells us, it's like the only way to grow. You can't grow by succeeding all the time. That doesn't make any sense. And oftentimes, athletic training, you try to bring your body to a point of safe failure. I think in your art practice, you're also trying to bring your practice into a point of generative failure. And yeah, I'm really glad that shines through in my movement style as well. And if we can talk a little bit about art generally, I think I've been thinking a lot about art in our world today. And when I first graduated from college, I actually created 2 works here in Seattle, 2 solo works. And my goal was I'm going to make this my career. And it wasn't until I failed and let go of that, and also got a job that pays a living wage, that I could feel like I have the time, space, and energy to create this and have the privilege of giving it as a gift to my community. So I was only able to get that through their failure. My recommendation for all artists is to get a day job.
It seems to be the model that works the best in a capitalist system, and it also allows you, as an artist, the freedom to say no to projects you don't feel like doing. We live in a culture, speaking of which, that often conflates art and entertainment, where art is evaluated on the premise of whether or not it's entertaining, and we tend to conflate understanding something with liking something. One has to follow the other. And I like how you've created a piece that, frankly, resists analysis. And you've talked about David Lynch as an inspiration. Please share.
David Lynch, director and fine artist. One of my favorite films by him is Mulholland Drive. He also made Lost Highway, which I love. The TV series, which I don't know. Twin Peaks, yeah. He talks about in his own work that mystery is good and confusion is bad. Bad in terms of not effective in communicating what you're going for. For my kind of style and taste in story making and performance is whispers, so I can just tell you a joke, like, come on closer so I can do something. And and that's just kind of, peekaboo is very fun. It always is fun. We don't play peekaboo enough. Anyway.
And I think the first time any of us saw Mulholland Drive, whether or not we liked the film, we didn't understand it, but it felt complete, and it felt emotionally right, and that's how I feel watching your piece.
I believe that it's the job of the artist to complicate the ordinary and to investigate the complicated. I think it's very interesting living through many different golden ages, especially when I was growing up and there was Breaking Bad on television. We were saying it's a golden age of TV. And that's true. Audiences have become incredibly sophisticated when it comes to narrative structures. And I think demands for complex storytelling is something that we really want in our culture. I do not see the same level of sophistication when it comes to analyzing painting, contemporary music, or dance, and that's totally okay. I mean, we don't have the same kind of space in our culture as we do for other mediums, because in a way, dare I say, creating a performance like this is a waste of time. It is a waste of time and energy and money, and I've never had such a good time wasting it. And I like my work, and I am really satisfied, and I'm really honored to have the privilege of creating an incredibly idiosyncratic work that doesn't have to please anyone but myself.
Well, a waste only when measured by economic productivity, but in terms of a piece of art that tells us something about ourselves, that makes us ask questions, it has real value. I loved being able to detect different influences there. There was slapstick, there was much more complex things, there was contemporary dance and ballet. Please think of questions, because we're going to open it up for questions in just a moment. I wanted to ask one more thing, though. Tell us about the song that opens and closes the piece.
So that music is sung by Mary Gallagher, who is an Irish musician in the early 20th century. It is keening music. In Ireland, there is a practice of keening, which is inviting a professional or some kind of stranger into a mourning space and to bring the mourners inviting them into their grief and allowing this kind of space making. And when I learned about keening and was reflecting on my family history, I wanted to bring in something that I felt was honored that, and also that would create that space. I used that song at the beginning and at the end to create a sense of cycles.
It does bring a wonderful cyclic aspect. I feel like when we are dwelling primarily in urban spaces, it's easier to conceive of existence as a gradual downward trajectory, a decline, but when we're spending more time in natural spaces, it's easier to conceive of life as cyclic, and I like how you bring that in. Okay, questions. Yes, I love when people ask questions, please.
Thank you. Yeah, the question was about a particular maneuver which we in my culture call the worm. That actually came very early in my kind of athletic career. It was kind of cool to be able to do the worm. And it's also a childhood trauma story, if I can share. I was like, after a soccer practice, I was doing the worm, but like with my hands in push-up position. And then one of my cohort was like, I bet you can't do the worm without your arms, because good breakdancers can. And I'm like, that's easy. And I went, whoop, and just landed on the ground. So I, a couple months ago, actually, was like, I was like washing my hair, and I thought of that. I'm like, oh, it was just so hard. But I took a moment. I'm like, wait, this happened like 20 years ago. And I thought about like, okay, I'm feeling this really intensely. I'm gonna just kind of be with the cringe for a little bit. And then I realized, wait, I don't do that anymore. I don't pretend that I can do things that I can't anymore. And so in that case, I'm taking your question to thank cringe on all of our behalves. Ooh, so the question was about gender being a group project in a way, especially taking from the work of Judith Butler and their theories of gender, as well as colonization being a group project. project with taking from the thought of like Frantz Fanon as well as many other decolonial scholars. And I decided to make this a solo piece because I did not have money to pay performers. I also, I was interested in expressing something inexpressible. I feel that like the genocide and the horrors of colonization in that entire project, how, as a settler, can I find a way to express that? And for me, it was creating a suite of characters that are experiencing some of the feelings that I have about it. As well, by the way, it's bad. Bad feelings. Just in case anyone's watching, but in posterity. Yeah, the question was about different iterations of the work, ideas of the work, and how they came in and left. The particular iteration that Navee's remembering is mayonnaise. I was going to kind of make you watch me inflate a like mini pool, and then I was going to do my mom's potato salad recipe on myself, which I think is a great idea. But it just became logistically untenable. Another thing I was going to do, I wanted care to be kind of the finale of this work, to be a gesture of care, because the potato has given so much to us. And that care for me, what takes the shape of mashed potatoes, actually. A family story that my mom told me was that my grandfather, he was raised by his grandparents in Michigan, and every day for lunch, his grandmother would make fresh mashed potatoes and hot cocoa, ride the bus to his high school, and give him lunch. Very sweet. And so I was going to make you watch me make mashed potatoes live on stage, and then feed you. That also became logistically untenable. And yeah, I was like, I can get disposable spoons and all this stuff. But mostly it was like having a hot plate and like boiling water for like 20 minutes. So many of the iterations came up against logistics and also what I had to work with. I think constraints as an artist is actually, it's a godsend. It's incredible. There is a film called Schenectady, New York, which is by Charlie Kaufman. Yes, Charlie Kaufman, who made an adaptation as well as Inside John Malkovich. Schenectady, New York is about an artist with an unlimited budget and the impossibility of finishing work of art under those conditions. I think, the kind of limitations that we come up against are what cause us to be creative. Yes, Jamie. Yes, there were 2 types of potatoes. One of them was organic russet, grown somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. I got them at the co-op. Support your local co-op. The other ones were like kind of like fingerling potatoes. I wanted for those ones at the beginning to be more subtle, and I wanted them to be tumor-like. Yes, I wanted there to be a feeling of outgrowth. And so I did seek out those 2 different types of potatoes. Yes, Sanjay. Yes, there's a motif of the potato chip in this work. The first time the potato chip appears seems to close the first act, where I finally am able to ingest the potato in my body. Previous to that, I tried to eat a raw potato, and I'm unable to. As well as in the film earlier, I'm unable to eat a raw potato. And so the potato chip is this incredible symbol where it's like commerce and how many hundreds of people had to show up to their jobs to get this potato chip into my hands. And sometimes when I'm like eating a potato chip or whisking my matcha like a clean girl, I reflect on all of the people that did work to bring this into my life. So that is kind of the potato chip. When I imbibe the potato chip, I imagine I'm finally accepting the spectre in a way. I'm accepting the totality of the potato. My body is still not able to take it, and so I grow into the Mr. Potato Head in a way. But with the kind of collapsing dolmen, I've tried to create this dual space. There's like the reality space and the mythical space. There's a psychological space in the screen. It's like that's the mind of the spectre and of us. And when the dolmen finally breaks, for me, that's like an accepting, like, yep, like it's all broken, and we're here. And I wanted to take this delicious, beautiful product of the potato and share it with you. And also kind of become one body in that way. The food that we eat is who we become. And when we're with friends and they make us a meal, we are slowly becoming our friends.
Right.
And so, yeah, I wanted to like become a priestess of Axumama and be like, y'all, we're in it together, we're here. The question was about what part of the video elements and their inspirations. While on Chien Andalou, which was a collaboration between Buñuel and Salvatore Dali, yes, wasn't a direct reference. I've actually never seen the film entire. I have seen like particular shocking images from that film. I did want surreal elements to be a part of that. And kind of these tricks of the camera, of cinema, to kind of shock. And yeah, I think that that's an appropriate kind of pushpin in the murder board of my art. Thank you. Yeah, the question was about my choice of music and whether I knew them beforehand or if I discovered them through my research. And it was a little bit of both. Many of them were there from the beginning. Ring of Fire, I knew was going to be in the work. Tennessee Ernie Ford was new to me. I asked my mother, what kind of music did your mother listen to? And she said, hymns by Tennessee Ernie Ford. Other work, Swan Lake was like a maybe reference. That's like the classical music that opens the work, as well as the Mr. Potato Head section. Those are segments from Swan Lake. In my oeuvre, if we can call 3 works an oeuvre, in my oeuvre, I sought a space for the queer body in classical ballet. My first work here in Seattle was The Sleeping Beauty with music by Tchaikovsky. My second work was Serenade with music by Tchaikovsky. And this work is Swan Lake with music by Tchaikovsky. And Tchaikovsky is kind of like, you know, like, is he gay? Kind of. And I really enjoyed working with Tchaikovsky. It was between this and Giselle, which is by Adolphe Adam, and I went with Swan Lake. The last piece of music to come into this work was the chaotic piano. That is composed by Conlon Nancarrow, who is an outsider composer. He was born in, the South, I think, and then moved to Mexico City and stayed there for the rest of his life. And he worked exclusively with player pianos, the ones where you like do like the little punch cards. And his work is actually really highly structured. It sounds like crap when you first hear it. But if you've listened to it as many times as I have, you're like, okay, this is when these parts are playing against each other. And I became fascinated in my research with that balance. Thank you so much. Yeah, the question was about my connection with the land, and especially potatoes. I am, I think, the first on or the second generation on my mom's side to not work the land. My mom did keep a garden, and we did have like chives. My connection with potatoes is mostly around her recipes. Scalloped potatoes, potato salad, twice baked potatoes, mashed potatoes. All various ways of inserting cream into potatoes. And it's all delicious, it's incredible. But my connection to land personally is I grew up in a rural, very rural place. As a kid, it was 3 hours from a mall, which was torture. Actually the kind of uniting theme of where I grew up is water. The indigenous name for where I grew up is where the water flows. It is part of the Great Basin. It's actually at the very edge of the Great Basin in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And the water in the Owens Valley is actually funneled 300 miles away to Los Angeles. Mulholland, a genius engineer, he engineered an incredible aqueduct which functions on gravity alone to bring that water from Bishop all the way to LA. But as a result, the water system in the valley was overtaxed. There is a giant lake bed, Owens Lake, which contributes to 1% of the world's pollution. One lake bed. There's a community on the shores of the lake, Keeler, which is abandoned, and well, mostly abandoned. There's like 15 people who continue to live there, but there's higher rates of cancer there. And other like themes in the land are borax mining. It's actually the mule capital of the world. Mules are a hybrid of horses and donkeys, and they are sterile, but they're really good at carrying stuff. And yeah, I would march every year in the Mule Days parade. And yeah, the kind of landscape of my childhood and that lives in my body is sitting in the back seat of a car driving 3 hours through the mountains. It is after school or even like a little bit before school's out, going with friends up to the boulders and going bouldering. It's camping, it's making sure you don't step on any rattlesnakes. It's sunburn, lots of sunburn. And yeah, I grew up in the high desert and it lives on. There was the part that surprised me was actually how I had to end up limiting it in scope. In regards to ancestry research and the scope of this work, I had a plan to hire a shipping boat to take me to Attu Island, Alaska. I was interested in this like movement west, where like I have ancestors that settled in New York, and then ancestors that settled in Michigan, and then settled in the Ozarks, and then to California. And I'm like, well, let's just finish the kind of arc of history, and I'm going to go as far west as you can, and it's Attu Island in Alaska. But in order to get out there, you have to budget at least $15,000, and there is no guarantee that you can land or even see it, because that area of the Pacific is incredibly tumultuous, very gray. It's very popular with migrating birds. So what surprised me was how generative, limiting the scope to just one theme, the potato, how generative that would be. And it was a very pleasant surprise. Yeah, it's really, it gives so much. And it's inspiring me to look at other themes that have cropped up in my research. Like I am conceiving of a work, Hidden Nature, Black Sheep, and it's all about how wool production caused famine. Or Hidden Nature, Sunflowers, about an aesthetic history of the sunflowers, also an American technology that is part of the European consciousness. Van Gogh's sunflowers. There's a book about a Nazi officer asking a Holocaust survivor for forgiveness called The Sunflower. And I think it's a very generative line of research. So this one kind of project has many possibilities. PhD to come. For me, the most important thing about Mr. Potato Head was that it would be funny. Yeah. That is the most important thing. Yeah. And then what I also love about Mr. Potato Head is that inside of Mr. Potato Head are all the ingredients to make Mrs. Potato Head. Very, very queer. Yes, Mark. Use of which?
Lace.
Lace. I would love to talk about the lace. This lace is actually from my family archives. It was handmade by my great-great-grandmother. And it's been kept by one of my aunts. And when I said, hey, I'm making a piece about family history, like, do we have any interesting photographs, letters? And my aunt was like, oh, we have this lace. Do you want some? I'm like, I love that. She's like, great, get it out of my house. Oh my gosh, it's been here for years. Just don't desecrate it or like, dishonor it in any way. But gosh, thanks for taking it out. Yes. And so it's a very beautiful object. It's also a very feminized object. It's literally an honor to wear thousands of hours of labor on my body, and yet there's an interesting kind of constraint in that, where lace is something that has been so devotedly created, and yet you have to be so careful. You cannot stain it, it rips easily, it's difficult to repair. It's also an interesting point of commerce and craft, where lace was handmade for such a long time. And it was one of the first kind of products to be mechanized by the jacquard loom. But odd thing about that, every single piece of lace created on a jacquard loom had to be finished by hand. I have a friend, Mal Ahern, who's a media scholar here at the University of Washington, and she's interested in how human finishing, especially in image production. And so like images that you would get at a 24-hour photo were all finished by hand. Images that you see in like children's books are all finished by hand. And so you just can't get humans out of the machine. At least 4. I did some research on can you eat a raw potato? And of course there's a very like crunchy granola right-leaning part of the internet that's like raw potatoes are like God's gift to your microbiome. And like there's a type of fiber in the potato that actually transforms when you eat it to become more starchy. When you cook it to become more starchy, so it's safer to eat after it's been cooked. Potatoes also have glycoalkaloids, which are mildly poisonous, especially green potatoes. You should not eat green potatoes. And I tested once, actually this all began with me eating a raw lemon. I have a whole little poem shtick about how I never buy lemons because I only do a lemon wedge and then the lemon rots. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a lemon, and then I made the lemon wedge. I'm like, well, this lemon's gonna rot, so I'm just gonna eat it. So I ate the lemon, and I'm like, oh wait, maybe I can do this for my potato piece. And yeah, it's actually kind of hard to eat a raw potato. Like there's something about it viscerally that your body's like, don't eat this. Yeah, and also that moment when you're, especially okay, home fries, no shade on breakfast. I love breakfast. Hash browns, always. Home fries, hit or miss. Sometimes you get one of the home fries, you bite into it, and it's still kind of hard on the inside. You're like, I did not ask for al dente home fries. And there's kind of a disgust in that. And I am very interested in disgust. It's an interesting kind of thing to investigate. Yes. Thank you so much.